Breaking news, leaving the White House this afternoon, President Trump described himself as not happy at all about a dangerous new crisis involving Russia. Russian gunboats seized 3 Ukrainian naval vessels and temporarily blocked a sea passage vital to Ukraine's economy. The U.S. State Department calls the incident a violation of international law, and at an emergency UN Security Council meeting, the U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley called it, and I'm quoting her now, yet another reckless Russian escalation. Let's bring in CNN's Brian Todd. Brian, what are you learning?
Wolf, tonight we are learning that anger and frustration in Washington toward Vladimir Putin is building. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo just condemned what he called this aggressive Russian action. But a key question tonight, is President Trump really going to hold Vladimir Putin to account over this? What began as a high-speed pursuit on the high seas tonight has become a high-stakes international crisis. It began Sunday as this Russian Navy ship was bearing down on a Ukrainian vessel. You can hear a commander barking orders in Russian. Come on, he says, left. Then, with a heavy thud and a splash of spray, the bigger Russian vessel slams into the Ukrainian boat. This collision, caught on camera, is the latest flashpoint between Russia and Ukraine, and the latest aggression, critics say, by a power-hungry Vladimir Putin. Ukraine says Russian ships intercepted Ukrainian vessels in the Kerch Strait, a narrow passage between Russia and Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula, which Putin annexed illegally 4 years ago. The Russians say it was the Ukrainians who acted aggressively.
This was definitely a provocation.
But the Russians seized 3 Ukrainian ships and detained 24 Ukrainian sailors. Analysts say this fits a pattern of the ambitious Russian president, who they say is obsessed with the former Soviet republic that he partially invaded in 2014, after it began turning away politically from Mother Russia and toward Western acceptance.
Putin's obsessed with Ukraine because it works. Because constantly needling Ukraine prevents the biggest country in Europe from moving on, being something other than a post-Soviet basket case. When and if it happened, at that point, 150 million Russians are going to look to the West at 50 million Ukrainians and say, well, why not us? And that would be a very big problem for Putin.
Experts say Ukraine's moves toward joining the EU and NATO, 2 groups it has not yet joined, are a threat to Putin, who still regrets the day the Soviet empire collapsed.
For him, having what he is calling this privileged sphere of influence is critical on the path to restoring Russia's great power status. And Ukraine really sits at the heart of that.
Tonight, President Trump's UN ambassador made it clear who she's siding with.
The United States will continue to stand with the people of Ukraine against the Russian aggression.
But tonight, the president is being less forceful.
We don't like what's happening, and hopefully it'll get straightened out. I know Europe is not, they are not thrilled. They're working on it too. We're all working on it together.
Analysts say this latest international crisis puts more pressure on President Trump to hold Putin accountable when they likely meet at the G20 summit in Buenos Aires this week.
Russia has a long track record of probing and testing U.S. and Western resolve, and that's exactly what's happening here. So I think it really raises the stakes in formulating our response. We have to come back with a clear, strong, unified message at the G20 about what the United States is willing to do if Putin doesn't stop these types of provocative actions.
So will President Trump really put pressure on Vladimir Putin over this latest clash between Russia and Ukraine in their expected meeting in Argentina this week? Well, we pressed the Trump administration repeatedly on that question. Neither the White House nor the State Department would comment. Wolf?
Brian, some analysts are saying there's a certain way President Trump has to approach Putin over all of this. What's going on here?
Right. Well, one analyst, a former senior intelligence officer, says if Trump is really going to come out strongly and criticize Putin over this incident and make him feel any consequences for it, well, Trump has really got to do that in private. This analyst says that Putin would respond better to that, and it would allow him to adjust his behavior without appearing weak in the eyes of the Russian people, and that is absolutely crucial for Vladimir Putin. So a lot of eyes are going to be watching them in Argentina this week.
We'll be watching it very closely. All right, Brian, thank you. Brian Todd reporting.